In a few weeks' time, London will play host to the 2012 Olympics, which organisers boast will be the most environmentally friendly games. But with a medal for all competitors' medals coming from one huge polluting hole in the ground, could London's 2012 legacy be less green than Greenwash?
The International Olympic Committee has the honor of announcing that the Games of the 30th Olympiad in 2012 are awarded to the city of London.
On July 27th, London will officially open the 2012 Summer Olympic Games, a celebration of what is best in athletic ability and national pride. It won the bid off the back of its promise for a sustainable Olympics, committing to create the greenest games ever. To do this, the London Organising Committee for the Olympic Games, or LOCOG, were tasked with bringing sponsors and suppliers in line with this vision.
The 2012 Games will be a Games that actually addresses some of the serious issues of carbon emission and sustainability.
To achieve the same, LOCOG created the Sustainable Sourcing Code, a set of stringent rules to ensure that only companies with impeccable ethical and environmental records would provide products and services for the Games. Among its many provisions were those applying to the most iconic and visible symbols of the Olympics, the competitors' medals. Every athlete wishes to win one, and every country wishes to celebrate one. Rio Tinto, the third largest mining company in the world, was chosen to supply all the gold, silver, and bronze for the medals, on condition that it complied fully with LOCOG's strict rules on sustainable sourcing. But our investigations have found that that compliance is now open to question. There's been a direct challenge to Rio Tinto's environmental record, and to the London Olympics' self-proclaimed green image. This is the Kennecott Mine in Salt Lake City, Utah, one of the largest open-pit extraction operations in the world. It is the mine that is providing 99% of the raw materials used in producing this year's 4,700 Olympic medals. This is also the mine that is supposed to comply fully with LOCOG's rigorous environmental standards as set out in its code. But we've discovered that Rio Tinto is facing claims in the Utah District Court that the Kennecott Mine has violated U.S. federal air emission standards for over 5 years. Jeremy Nichols is the climate director for Wild Earth Guardians, a group who uses legal means to enforce environmental laws. He is part of a coalition which accuses Rio Tinto of violating the U.S. Clean Air Act, a federal law which could be enforced by citizens. The Clean Air Act was created to prevent deaths caused by air pollution.
We have a lot of friends here, a lot of allies who have a very serious air quality problem on their hands. They have terribly unhealthy air pollution, and a lot of it goes back to the fact that polluters here refuse to take accountability to take steps to limit their pollution, oftentimes in violation of the law. So we were approached by our friends here who had a problem with Kennecott and the mine operation here, and they looked to us for help in terms of finding a way to solve this problem. And as we dug into this company and their operations, we did find that they were violating the law and violating in a really big way, basically violating their production limits. So mining more copper than they are legally allowed to mine.
Aircraft ground approach again.
Thank you, 761 X-ray Echo. We're off of South Valley. We want to take some pictures of the Kennecott mine. We want to make sure we're out of your airspace.
The Utah lawsuit poses a major challenge to Rio Tinto's environmental credentials. It alleges that Rio Tinto has been exceeding production limits set by the Environmental Protection Agency since 2006, putting more pollution into the valley than ever before. Although Kennecott's management says that those production increases were authorized by the state of Utah, the suit claims the increases were never approved by the federal EPA, and are therefore illegal. The lawsuit is being brought by an unprecedented coalition of doctors, mothers, and environmentalists who live and work in the Salt Lake City Basin, a metropolitan area with a population of over 1.5 million people, situated just 25 miles from the Kennecott mine. There is no mine in the world this large that is so close to an urban population. Dr. Brian Munch, an anesthesiologist and a leading member of the coalition, believes that chronic air pollution in Salt Lake City is affecting human health.
About the middle of January 2007, so 5 years ago, we had a stretch here in Salt Lake City of about 4 weeks when the air pollution was just oppressive. 4 straight weeks of the worst air you could possibly imagine. So I talked to about 7 or 8 of my colleagues, and they were also very upset about the fact that A, we were in what appeared to be a public health crisis, B, nobody seemed to really understand it, and C, certainly nobody was addressing it.
What Salt Lake City was experiencing was a perfect storm of pollution, geology, and atmospheric conditions. In the winter, high-pressure systems trap a thick layer of cold air in the bowl-shaped basin. As a consequence, any pollution in the valley is trapped too, unable to escape. These phenomena are known as inversions. Dr. Munch organized a group of physicians to research how serious these inversions were, and the Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment was formed 5 years ago. Their aim is to prevent health problems exacerbated by the inversions, and by holding the largest polluters in the valley accountable.
I started looking in the medical literature, and I was actually shocked. There is an enormous amount of medical literature, but it's not well known even among the medical community about the negative health impacts of air pollution.
I'm a pediatrician. I see kids on a daily basis. I can tell you when our air is bad, the number of kids I see with problems with wheezing, breathing, lung problems goes way up. But if your lungs are reactive or irritated easily, then they can't deal with that extra stress of that added particulate and other matter that gets tossed into our air and then settles into the valley because of the inversions that we get.
According to its own emissions figures provided to state regulators in 2008, Rio Tinto is the single largest source of industrial pollution in the Salt Lake City Basin. Dr. Munch and his group believe that there is a direct link between Rio Tinto's pollution and the adverse health effects on the citizens of Salt Lake.
Almost every phase of that mining operation, from the enormous waste rock piles that you might have seen that are 1,100 feet high, to the mine concentrator, to the smelter, all of that emits a steady stream of heavy metals into the atmosphere, into the environment. Every bit of lead exposure is to be avoided and considered toxic. Well, they admit themselves that they emit just out of their smokestack 6,235 pounds of lead every single year. Now, lead and all the other heavy metals are not biodegradable. They're not combustible. They can't be destroyed. So every year, year after year after year, this heavy metal exposure to this community steadily mounts up. Our exposure is cumulative. We're not actually an organization who's trying to shut the mine down. That's not our objective. But we are intent on trying to make them a more responsible member of the community by having them limit their pollution. They don't seem to want to do it voluntarily, so we're going to use every means we can to twist arms in every legal avenue that we've got.
Rio Tinto declined an interview with Al Jazeera to discuss the lawsuit. But in a statement, it told us that
Kennecott is in compliance with very strict standards across our operation, always receiving the necessary approvals from the state of Utah before increasing the amount of material moved and staying under the approved levels. Clean air regulations and our own commitment to health, safety and the environment are designed to protect human health.
the Utah lawsuit has yet to come to court. But if Rio Tinto is found to be breaking the USA's clean air laws, it would also be in breach of LOCOG's Sustainable Sourcing Code, designed to help London 2012 achieve its stated aim of being the greenest ever Olympics. The code states clearly that
suppliers and licensees are expected to comply with the national and other applicable law, and where provisions of law or the code are more stringent, to apply the more stringent provision.
the organizers of this summer's event aren't the only ones seeking to enhance their reputation. Watched by over 4 billion people, the Games allow companies selected as sponsors to align their brand with Olympic ethics and dramatically boosts their global profile.
Rio Tinto's Kennecott Utah Copper and Kennecott Land produce more than you might know.
After paying $16 million for the rights to become an official Olympic sponsor, Rio Tinto has worked hard to portray itself as a sustainable company. But those concerned about pollution from Rio Tinto's Kennecott mine say this image is something that LOCOG should have questioned before awarding the contract. Dr. Munch leads one of only several groups involved in the federal lawsuit against Rio Tinto. Cherise Udell is the founder of Utah Moms for Clean Air, a watchdog body that lobbies for cleaner air policies across the Salt Lake City region.
This is supposed to be the greenest Olympics ever. And then how ironic that the medals for the medals are being mined right here in our community, and in that process, they're creating excessive amounts of air pollution that are permanently damaging the lungs of the children growing up here, and therefore those kids are very unlikely to ever be able to compete competitively in sports, let alone the Olympics. The issue that I have with them is that they don't pay the true cost of doing their business. So their argument's always so interesting that, you know, the world needs copper, so they have to do their business. Well, yes, fine, do your business, but don't, you know, put all this toxic pollution out in the air so that you can increase your bottom line. Environmental groups can be easily brushed aside by industry, by the public, by government, but you can't brush aside mothers protecting their children. You just can't.
Cherise believes that taking Rio Tinto to the Utah courts is only one way of holding them accountable. The other is by directly challenging their green image and their involvement in the London Olympics.
Well, as an activist, you have to be an opportunist. And so the Olympics presented a fabulous PR opportunity for us as much as it did for them in many ways. Because, you know, the world is watching.
Cherise Udell is the founder and president of Utah Moms for Clean Air. When the Olympic Committee announced that the 2012 Summer Games would be the greenest ever, she was all for it.
But then I heard the list of companies that were becoming sponsors of this Olympics. Knowing what I know about Rio Tinto, and said, green, really?
Udell is hoping her message will resonate in London as she and others from around the world tell their stories to company shareholders, Olympic officials, fellow activists, and the public at large. Andrea Smartin, KUER News.
In a way, I feel like I have a dragon to slay, so I feel like I'm coming into like the dragon's lair. And this particular dragon is quite the bully. And as a mom, I feel like I need to go and put this bully in his place. There's a number of things that I hope to accomplish. One of them is, obviously, the entire world is looking at London. They're preparing for the Olympics. All eyes are turned on this platform here that's been created for the 2012 Olympics. And Rio Tinto want to be associated with that, and we're saying, no, you don't have a right to be associated with that.
This is Cherise's second visit to London to speak at Rio Tinto's annual general meeting. She's determined to press the CEO and its shareholders on the controversy surrounding the Utah Kennecott mine.
Last year, I think I took them by surprise coming as a proxy shareholder to their meeting, but I think this year they probably know that I'm on my way.
Over the next few days, Cherise takes her campaign to public events and private meetings across the Olympic City. Chairing one of those meetings is Meredith Alexander, who has been at the center of an ongoing debate calling for greater rigor in regulating Olympic sponsors. In January this year, after questioning the ethical credentials of a major sponsor, she resigned from the Commission for a Sustainable London 2012, the body responsible for ensuring LOCOG is fulfilling its green commitments for the Olympics.
And by coming on air tonight to talk to you about this, I've taken the decision to resign from that commission to stand up for my principles.
Companies have so many different impacts, and it's hard to find a company that's 100% sustainable in everything that it does. But just because it's difficult to draw a line doesn't mean that you should totally refuse to accept any responsibility. The low-cog sustainable sourcing code is a step in the right direction, but it's about putting into contracts the way in which companies must behave, whether it's about their environmental sustainability, how workers are treated. I think expecting consumers to police companies is unfair. It's actually government's job to do that.
Charisse has drafted in the help of another mother, U.S. bobsled champion and longtime clean air advocate Alexandra Allred. Named Athlete of the Year by the U.S. Olympic Committee, she has come to London to press Rio Tinto on its activities and push the importance of Olympic standards.
When Charisse and I started talking about this, and then I found out that since Rio Tinto moved into town, Salt Lake has become the 9th most toxic city in the United States. That's devastating. And given my background with the Olympics, this is really personal for me. If these companies are allowed to continue to self-report and self-regulate, who's going to stop them?
Charisse and Alex have set up a meeting with the Commission for a Sustainable London. According to LOCOG's own code, anyone with a complaint about a supplier can ask the Commission or LOCOG to investigate. If that supplier is found to be breaching the Sustainable Sourcing Code, its contract can be cancelled. Today, Charisse and Alex are asking the Commission to look into Rio Tinto's environmental credentials. The Commission declined our request to film the meeting.
They said, look, no mining company is great, and if we're going to get the metals for the metals, we have to have it mined. And I said, well, actually, no, you don't. Yeah. If you really want to be sustainable, you don't use new material, especially with something with such a huge environmental footprint. You recycle, repurpose, and reclaim.
But I told them too, when you set the standards, you're setting it for the athletes too. I mean, this comes full circle. I mean, this is everything. Is when you demand excellence in all ways. Why we just demand excellence of our athletes in that specific
and not from
moment.
The companies. Yeah.
What? I mean, so we should expect excellence from everyone at all times.
They have this sort of unprecedented opportunity as this major international organization to actually set precedent, to set the standards on the sustainability practices for these really large gatherings of people.
Afterwards, we wrote to the Commission, asking them whether they or LOCOG would be investigating the complaints raised in the Utah lawsuit. The Commission said it was not responsible for auditing suppliers to London 2012, but that it had asked LOCOG for more information.
We have asked LOCOG whether it has sought an independent investigation, and we understand they have no plans to do so. It is disappointing that LOCOG has chosen not to use their complaints mechanism in this case.
LOCOG has told Al Jazeera,
"We have received no complaints and no representation has been made to us, so there is nothing to investigate. We are completely satisfied with Rio Tinto."
While the Olympics can be profitable, they would not be feasible without the sponsorship revenue. To date, LOCOG has obtained over $1 billion in sponsorship deals. And this is not the first time Rio Tinto has been an official sponsor to the Olympics. In 2002, the Kennecott mine also provided the raw materials for the medals in the Salt Lake City Winter Games. This time their claim to the public and their shareholders is that the medals will be the largest and heaviest in Olympic history, containing more gold, silver, and bronze than ever before. But Charisse and Alex want shareholders to get another message. They're heading to the Rio Tinto annual general meeting to square up to the board of directors.
It's empowering to come and confront the people who are making the decisions that affect our lives, because normally we don't actually get to do that. It just has to trickle down to them, because we don't normally have access. They hide themselves behind secretaries and walls and doors.
I told Charisse, but usually before competitions I always wake up early. I can't sleep. And this morning, 5:20, and I was awake. And I've been awake since 5:20.
I was gonna say, did you read it?
Outside, other groups from around the world are protesting the company's environmental record and its Olympic role as the official medal provider.
What do we want? Clean water! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Stop the lockout! When do we want it? Now!
So I was the very last question, and actually they cut it off before me, and I said, you know, excuse me, I respectfully request that you listen to my question. I traveled here all the way from Utah. So what is he going to say? No? You know?
She was great. You really were. I mean, she stood up. She wasn't going to take no, and you did.
Yeah, and they knew
it. And I
it,
think
so
they
I
knew
guess-
it, and he sort of sighed and said, all right, let her have the microphone.
Yeah, said shareholders, you know, in a way I am here as your friend because these are liabilities that they are hiding. And they are going to rear their ugly heads up, and you are going to have to pay for them eventually. With you, I said, for example, does anyone here know that Utah Moms for Clean Air and Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment, that we are suing Rio Tinto for violating the Clean Air Act? Does anyone in this room know that, besides the people sitting up at the board and the CEO? And everyone's quiet. But I'm sure they haven't shared that information. These shareholders, if they were smart, would actually be asking questions and looking into these things.
Then, with the media on hand, Shri seizes the moment to make her point.
These balloons represent the annual death toll from Rio Tinto's operations in Utah due to chronic air pollution exposure. 150 deaths per year thanks to Rio Tinto's operations in our valley. They choose to allow this to happen. They do not have to allow this death toll to happen every year, but they do, and that is why we are here today. Each one of these represents a life lost because of Rio Tinto's activities in our community.
Okay.
This is what is left. It's not very pretty.
You know, I didn't think this was going to upset me.
It's very upsetting when you think this is a child, this is someone's child.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to die, but is dying because Rio Tinto is too cheap to clean up its mess. That's why.
We put these specific allegations about pollution-related deaths to Rio Tinto. Their statement said,
"We have heard numerous claims from these advocacy groups, but there has been no consistency in their claims and they have not provided any basis for their data. Kennecott's air emissions are strictly regulated by the US EPA and the state of Utah's Division of Air Quality. It seems inconsistent with the regulatory process to allow Kennecott to operate in a fashion that caused the kinds of deaths alleged by these groups."
Those behind the Utah lawsuit say their figure of 150 premature deaths is a conservative estimate, but that it's based on American Heart Association mortality rates for particulate matter in air pollution. They say that because Kennecott accounts for around 30% of particulate pollution in Salt Lake City, then Kennecott is causing the deaths of around 30% of the city's victims of this kind of pollution.
So the pollution that is experienced by the 1.5, 1.6 million people who are affected by this mine, all those children are having, to a certain degree, their lung function and growth inhibited permanently by their exposure to this pollution.
It's not enough to have Olympic values. You have to put Olympic values into practice. And so far, my experience has been that when it comes to sponsorship deals, Olympic values go out the window and it's all about the dollar signs.
I mean, if the goal is sustainability, let's have some real standards in place. And let's really make sure that the companies that are providing the services, in this case the medals, probably the most visible symbol of the Olympics, the least that they can ask for is some honesty.
With less than 50 days to go to the London Olympics, promises to create the greenest games ever are facing criticism. With allegations being leveled at Rio Tinto and their activities in Utah, pressure on the London organizers is mounting. It begs a question. Will the 2012 Summer Olympics be remembered for delivering a sustainable legacy, or for creating the golden opportunity for companies to greenwash their image?